You know, just like physical illness, mental illness can be overcome. We just got to inspire people to believe that.
The mental health community and the firearms industry spend way too much time running parallel to each other without communicating. It's time we change the narrative and destroy the stigma that we both face.
Walk the Talk America presents Guns and Mental Health, a podcast for firearms owners, clinicians, and the curious public. If you are not watching on video, you missed the strangest looking Zoom dance routine that this show has ever experienced. Oh, I love our intro music though. Good find, Michael. That was such a good find 2 years ago when you're scouring the internet looking for music. I'm Jake Wiskershin. I'm joined by Michael Sedini as always, and all the way from, you're not in New Jersey. Are you in New Jersey? Where are you right now?
Why are you so low?
I don't know.
Volume went way down.
Yeah, your volume did go down. Are you in New Jersey, Jake?
Oh, maybe. How about
Yeah.
now? Is my volume any higher now?
Yell out your window louder.
No, but seriously, did it go up yet?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right. I just jacked it all the way to the top. Anyway, Tony Simon. Maybe or maybe not in New Jersey. Maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I'm slipped into a fugue state. Tony Simon, how are you, sir?
Doing well, man. It's good to see you. Good to see you both.
Yeah, good to be seen. Good to be here. It's been a minute. Last time we saw each other, we were in Missouri.
Yes, we were.
About, geez, almost 10 months ago now. What are you doing on our show? Why are you here? Maybe you should introduce yourself.
I'm slumming. My name is Tony Simon. I'm from New Jersey, and I'm from the Second is for Everyone Diversity Shoot, Second is for Everyone podcast. And what I do is introduce people to firearms and their Second Amendment rights and Second Amendment advocacy. And I introduce these people regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or background. And I bring them to the range and we discuss their civil rights. We answer any questions anyone has. And then we take them out to the range after we introduce them to Second Amendment groups who are at the events. We introduce them to the members of those groups or the officers in those groups. And then we go to the range and shoot guns after we eat pizza and have some prizes and have some fun. What I try to do is break down the artificial walls that have been put up between us to make us all seem like somehow we're different. And I use my event to actually break those down, have you start seeing people as people. And then you can ask me any questions about Second Amendment rights. If your friends are on the fence, if your mom is on the fence, or if they want to ask, why would anyone need an AR-15? Why would anyone need 30-round magazines? We can actually have these discussions and not attack them. The whole thing is set up to actually answer these questions and have the conversation that people say they want to have about gun control while everybody else is on the range having fun shooting guns. And in Pennsylvania, we actually have MP5s, Thompsons, and Uzis that we have people shoot all fault auto. So sometimes, even if it's a bucket list thing and you want to shoot a gun, come to my event. We're going to have some fun. We're going to shoot some guns. We're going to eat some pizza. We're going to have some prizes. And you're going to meet people that may be your friends. You just haven't met them yet.
And that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Tony. It's good to see you.
Oh, man. So I actually didn't know that much about it. I knew what you did. I knew you introduced new people to firearms and talked about all the rights and stuff. But that sounds very much like the way that we welcome people into the counseling world, really. And so I'm really pleased to hear that. I'm excited to talk to you more about that. Mike, how are things?
Things are good, man. I'm excited to have you on, Tony, because I'm not even kidding you. Jake and I have talked about having you on forever. And for some reason, I don't know. I mean, we just never got to, and I finally said, we have to have Tony on because I feel like what you do is in the same vein of WTTA, right? The fact that you're getting people out there, the fact that you're creating this space that is making people feel safe and, to me, you're one of the most positive and happy people, that I've ever met in the industry. Right now, that's not to say that you don't have your bad days, but when I've seen you at events, whether that's a gun policy event or like SHOT Show or whatever, you're always in a good mood. And I think that plays well to people that are terrified of firearms or maybe apprehensive coming into the community, because a lot of people in our community is like Cobra Kai, they
They're too,
I mean,
be you, whoever you are, be who you are. But yeah, there's a little much tactical Timmy. There's a little too much vote from the rooftop uh, commentary. And it's like, yo, bro, if you welcome people in, you might want to chill a little bit and try to identify with every person, not your little niche of whatever you believe in the gun community, from instructors to the tactical Timmy to survivalists to just whatever, man. Look, we all welcome. We need to have a big tent, and the white dude that's law enforcement or former law enforcement, military, that's great, welcome. But that can't be all it is, because they've turned that against you. Our opposition, anti-gunners, whatever you want to talk about, they've made being you bad. We're going to need help from outside that hardcore circle of 2A supporters. You're going to have the single moms from inner whatever background you want to. You're going to have gays. You're going to have LGBT community. You're going to have to come at this from multiple ways, just like the attacks coming at us, but coming from multiple directions. We're going to have to fight back, doing the exact same thing. Just good people, just like we gun owners are. I mean, they all pass background checks and everything else. It's just they're going to have to be from different backgrounds. We're going to have to allow others to speak and step into the forefront and be the face and the voice of the Second Amendment. Things like DC Project, things like Maj Toure, Kevin Dixie, myself, the women in this industry that are kicking ass. We're going to have them take the forefront. The Black women that are instructors, people like Rhonda Mary. You're going to have to chill out a little bit and promote them, learn who they are and promote them. I was on G-Web's podcast, and I was asked, what can middle-aged white dudes do in the struggle for the Second Amendment? And it's find out who the minorities are, who those others are, and promote them in your circle. That's what it's going to have to be. I'm not telling anybody to step back. I'm just going, find other people, lift them up. Find other people, promote them. A rising tide raises all ships. We need to work together at this. Even if you don't know these people or agree with everything politically, as long as you agree on the Second Amendment, that's all we're working at.
It's so good. It's so good. I am curious. I was just on another therapist's podcast a week ago. She's going to launch it in May. She's doing this big thing, and I'm very excited for what she's got moving. But we just met on Twitter and started following each other, liked each other's content, and I was like, "Oh, I'd love to have you on my podcast." She has a lot to say about my profession in a different way, and then she was like, "Oh, I want to hear about this guns and mental health thing. That's crazy. Nobody does that." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's just us." But one of the things that she asked was, and a side note to that, she's gun neutral. She self-described left coast liberal her whole life, and is turned off by the woke, which is great. That's kind of how we connected. The woke is toxic, but she's very left, very liberal, doesn't know guns, doesn't understand them, and was humble and curious enough to ask, which I thought was amazing. And the humility that she demonstrated, I think, is what you're alluding to now. Like the people in our demographic who are in the gun community, who are very rigid and certain in their beliefs, I think need to take more of that humble approach and go, maybe I don't know everything there is to know, and I need to be curious to find out more so that you can become a better advocate. But one thing that she asked me was, she says, what are some myths and stereotypes about the gun community, the gun culture, that you want people to know that aren't, necessarily true? And I offered a few things, some of the names that you just offered. I said, for me, and I'm fairly new to this. I came into the gun community having owned guns my whole life, but I didn't really connect with the culture at all or know much about it until I met Mike and Rob and joined up with WTTA and very recently, 2019. And I said, it's the diversity. Like it's honestly, I had no idea that it's not monolithic, white dudes with beards wearing fatigues and shooting in the desert. Right. And that really surprised me. My question to you is very similar. What is something that people would be surprised to find out, not necessarily about the gun community, but about your experiences and your discoveries as you've gone through this? Like, what have you been surprised pleasantly to find out that maybe blows the lid off of what people typically think of as non-gun people as they come through?
Okay, it's a couple of things. It's what is surprising to non-gun people. Non-gun people are surprised about the diversity, but not only the diversity of color, because that's usually what people see, race, but the diversity of intelligence, or as in education, excuse me, not intelligence, but education, educational backgrounds, occupations, in any class, in any event. I like to say I'm the dumbest, brokest dude in the room. Usually people all have businesses, multiple businesses. Many are professionals. Many have advanced degrees. The amount of money they make is into the six figures, depending on which class and where I have it. But it's all over, from the person that works at a convenience store, who's, I don't assign any race you want to it, an educational level, to someone that works at a convenience store, to lawyers, teachers, CEOs. They come to my events. Now, the surprising thing to gun people is the first time gun owners that come into my events, or people interested, don't start at the bottom when they buy their first firearm. And that's something I have to convince a lot of the people that I'm trying to get to sponsor us. It's like, everybody in the door is not buying a High Point or a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport. I mean, I have guys come in like, what's the best fill in the blank? And I'll buy that. I want to buy once, cry once, and I have some money. And that surprised me. That's one of the things I learned. I also learned that a lot of people like to talk about advocacy and not do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's something I learned too. And they're really glad to let someone else do the heavy lifting, and then they give lip service and don't put in work themselves. That's because I thought I was going to be working with just a bunch of advocates that couldn't wait to get stuff done. And it's like, no, you work with a bunch of people to say, man, I really wish I could have been there. Like I told you about it 6 months ago. I put my schedule out for the entire year. You could have been there. So yeah, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot for everybody to learn. That's why I try to have people come in with an open mind and just have fun. I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm not trying to preach to you. I'm not trying to convert you at one diversity shoot. Let's have a conversation. Let's make this fun. Bring your kids the next time.
Your energy, Tony, when it comes to talking about the 2A, because I've had you over at my house. We've sat around the kitchen, and like I can imagine you being disappointed in many people that talk about being advocates, because you truly are. Like, you live this shit. You do. Like, I mean, you could. I'm a gun person. I grew up around it, but like the way you talk about 2A rights, and just the 2A in general, is the way I talk about MMA, right? Like, to my friends, we can sit there and talk about it all day, but you do that. So I could definitely see where, I think you have every right to step back and judge other people that claim to be advocates. You know what I mean? Like, that's one place where I'm just like, he's not a hypocrite. Like, he lives for this shit. And the biggest thing that I would say in the gun community that we always talk about is we don't do a job of bridging that gap to those, right? Like, we always say, like, if people would just take the time to come through, then they'll understand. And you're actually out there doing it. You know what I mean? You're actually out there doing it and getting all these different demographics that we need to get to survive. And also that, those demographics, they need the second as well. Let's face it, the second is truly for everybody. You feel like you're screwed, arm up,
It sucks because I don't want to seem like that dude. That I don't want to preach to anybody. Everybody can have their own advocacy. But understand, if you push it one way so hard, you might turn another group off. Kevin Dixie talked about it in 2019 at the DC thing that we were all at, when he talked about 1776. I'm like, yeah, that's a rally call for a certain group. 1776 wasn't a good year for the black man. Just say it, not in America. So yeah, you might be a swing and a miss with that. Like 1976 might be better for us. And you have to meet people. Something I told I don't know who, but I said it. You got to meet people at 60%. You got to meet people at more than halfway. You can't just keep saying the things you're comfortable with. Cold dead hands, vote from the rooftop. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. You're going to miss a lot of people with that. You're going to have to step out from your comfort zone, go that 60%, and try to understand and empathize with somebody that maybe does not have your same perspective. And it takes a little bit. And also, those people have to understand, whoever the heck you're talking to, that maybe you'll have some faux pas and say the wrong thing and misspeak. And that should be understandable because we're all human. That's why I try to make my events Second Amendment only. We're not talking about anything else. Take off your MAGA hat. I don't even want to know what your favorite team is unless that's something y'all can have in common. I'm trying to bring you together and get rid of the divisiveness so we can see that there are people whose entire job is to make America not be that melting pot, to keep us at each other's throats so they can slowly steal our rights away from us. And we need to stop that and understand that these are civil rights for all people. And as a Black man born in this country, I'm the first generation of Black American born with the same rights as a white American. That's how short a while ago civil rights were. 1968 was the Housing Act. That was the last of the Black civil rights. I'm that first generation. Why on earth would I give my Second Amendment rights away now to make people feel better about a false sense of security? So that's what I'm fighting for. And that's for the next generation, because we can lose this all in one generation. That's why it's really important we all start advocating.
Let me ask you this. So not in the perspective of like broadly macro to because we know historically we can look back across all the little digitized maps that are being floated across Instagram and stuff, that states now are much more friendly to gun rights. We're seeing restrictions dropped, court challenges being one, universal concealed carry without, or otherwise known as constitutional carry without permits. But I want to ask you, with your mission being a little different than that, which is the togetherness, is it working?
It's working more than you think. I didn't know how it was going to work out, admittedly. More and more minorities are coming. They're bringing their families. They're being seen. They're coming to other events because their friends have motivated them to. They're buying guns. They're going to training classes. So we've seen the increase. With the increase of minorities coming to my events, I've been encouraging them to go to other events, work for myself, work for Maj. Yeah, we can see it. We can see it in the ranges. We can see it in diversity of attendees. One of the ranges I work with is Recoil Range in Monroe, New Jersey, and they've watched it. They've watched it become more diverse, their customer base. And they just opened up last year, and they've seen it because they live in that town, and they've watched it grow. So yeah, we've seen a bunch of differences. We've seen more and more activism of people of color, and of every background, because I work with them. I work with DC Project. I've worked with Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols. And there are a lot of more people becoming a lot more active, which I think is awesome. Yeah, I even NAGA, National African American Gun Group, I think it's called, a gun association, excuse me. They had no one in Jersey when I started, because we all started in 2015. They did not have a New Jersey rep. Now they have New Jersey meetings. So yes, it is growing.
So you said something in there that I really want to touch on and kind of tease out a little bit. It was you're seeing these new attendees now returning, and maybe not necessarily your events, but to ranges in groups. And it sounds like there's a cohesion that really resonates with me, because I am in a profession that has largely, I mean, we live in the shadows, but we put ourselves there. There's a lot of rhetoric that comes through the colleges and universities and our graduate programs that say that, we need to somehow be a part of this stigmatization of the culture by not acknowledging our patients in public. And it's all done under the auspices of, you can't see the air quotes if you're listening on the thing, but it's like under the auspices of confidentiality. And I think what we've done is we've ended up keeping ourselves in hiding. And so people come to therapy, they leave, then they don't go tell anybody how successful it was. They just kind of keep it to themselves, and they're like, oh, their friends are like, man, you seem more relaxed these days, you're happier. It's like, yep, did some good work. It's like, give credit, but you're drawing these people out of the shadows. And that's what I'm wondering is like, we know that we have, I don't know, figures vary, but somewhere between 10 and 15 million new gun owners over the last 2 years. Are they just going and buying and then retreating back to their homes and not discussing it? Or are they coming together? And it sounds like they're coming together. You're actually finding like camaraderie and brotherhood through this thing. And I don't know if that's happening in the West because you live in the East. Are there other people like in my geography that are doing what you're doing?
I know I have people from around the country asking me to do what I do there. So I'm assuming if people are asking, it's not already there.
Good.
But like I heard, gun, dang, I really wish I could remember. San Diego. There's a podcast, got firearms related podcast out of San Diego. I was on it. I cannot think of the name of the podcast. I'm sorry, but they do something like I do, which is really cool.
Is it Gun Owners Radio?
Yep, that's it. Gun
Yeah,
Owners Radio.
they had us on recently.
Yeah, I kept seeing the logo, but I couldn't think
Yeah,
of the name. Yeah, they have shoots, something like we do, and that's great. I remember when I first started this, I actually was doing a speech. We have a New Jersey Second Amendment Educational Conference, NJ SafeCon. And I did a speech and I was like, you can do what I do. You can host events where you're at. I mean, I put it on, I'm doing nothing spectacular or different. And my partner, Sean, came and went, dude, you just told everybody to do what you do. They're your competition. I'm like, I have no competition. I'm
thank
not competing
you.
with anyone.
Yes, love that.
I have no competition. If you want to look, don't call it the Second is for Everyone diversity shoot, but if you want to host something at your range and invite people, do it. If you want to work with your local Second Amendment groups and bring people in, do it. You're not competing with me.
Okay, let's get to the how. How can somebody like, I don't have time on my hands these days, but if I were somebody listening in the West Coast or the Midwest or up north, how does a person who maybe they know their local range operator, maybe they know a retail store person, maybe they just have some buddies, they're like, I think I want to do that, but maybe they're like, oh, but I don't carry the charisma and the swagger that Tony does. I fumble through my Second Amendment rights. I don't know. I don't even know what my state's legislature is doing. I just know that I'm passionate about this and I want to have some broader group of people to hang out with. I want to teach my neighbors' kids, but I don't know how to invite. So what's the how? How do people take that step?
Actually, I had a friend of mine actually do that. He was like, I don't know these people. He worked at the range here. He knew me, George. He knew me at the range here, but he was retiring from the military and going down to Virginia. He was like, how do I do it? And I'm like, start showing up for stuff. He was like, what? Start showing up for your local 2A stuff. When you start showing up every time, every month, maybe for their meetings, you join, you go to the range and you be personable and you learn people. You find out who they are and they see you putting in the work and you volunteer with them and you learn who's around and people can see you genuine. You're not just trying to walk into a range where no one knows you and go, hey, let's have a diversity shoot. Like, who is this whack job? You have to put in the work. You have to be known. You have to build a group of friends. That's what I did. It's not like I showed up in 2015 and just started this. I actually started in 2012. I got my I was in the Corps. I got out of the Marine Corps. I didn't touch a firearm for a really long time. And my friend Sean introduced me to firearms again. He went and got his certification, NRA instructor certification, rifle, pistol, and shotgun. And of course, the next thing you do is you start classes. Well, I'm like, I don't need no stinky classes. I was in the Marine Corps. I went and bought a 1022, went to the range and realized I suck. The skill just deteriorated. I sucked. And Sean was like, hey, I'm putting together a class Sunday. You want to go? And I did. I went to the class, and I say Friday, I was at the range and I shot a 10-round group the size of a pizza box. I went to his class Sunday. I went back to the range Monday. I shot a 10-round group, and this is at 15 yards. You can cover with a postage stamp. And I'm like, I want to teach people to do this. So I got my rifle, pistol, shotgun, and range safety officer certifications at Gun for Hire Range in Woodland Park. And reason I'm saying that is I'm hosting an event there on the 13th of April. So I got all of my stuff and I'm ready to become this great trainer. And then Sandy Hook happened. And New Jersey legislators had like 86 anti-gun bills loaded up and they just shot them through, like 7-round magazine limitations, just every dumb wish list anti-gun thing they had. And that turned me into an activist. And that's when I wrote my first letter. That's when I actually joined Facebook, taking pictures. I was already on Facebook, but I didn't really do anything. I was just looking for dudes I was in the military with. But what happened is I joined every gun group. I took a picture of this letter Sean and I wrote. We took like half a day Sunday to write it, get the wording right, to our legislators, asking them to vote against all gun control. And we put it out there and it had 15,000 hits. And the letter went viral. And that was my first activism. And then I got involved with my Second Amendment groups in my local areas. I went to the protests. So by the time 3 years later, after speaking at the state capitol, when I was the only Black guy who spoke out of 200 pro-gun people, I'm like, where are people at? You know, I've been doing this for 3 years. I've been training people and none of us were represented in that room. I mean, I looked like a raisin in a barrel of rice, bro. It was like, it looked like a Klan rally, I swear to God. And I'm like, what's up? Where are people? So I went and spoke to the heads of the Second Amendment groups. I was like, is there something that encourages minorities to become involved in the political side of this fight? And they were like, yeah, no. Like, how do we get Black people involved in it? And I'm like, the same way you get white people involved in it. You bring food and free shit and people show up. And that's what I started doing. And I put it together. Actually, I went and saw, I was trying to get stuff to give away, swag items. So I was calling, actually, I don't know how I did that first. I just invited people over. And then I went and saw Rob Pincus, maybe by my third event. Rob was doing something. He was training some classes down in Jersey. And I wanted to meet him and speak to him. And I did. And I'm like, hey, Rob, my name is Tony. I run a Second Amendment workshop here in Jersey. He was like, how can I help? Like, I didn't get 2 sentences into it. He was like, how can I help? And he went out to his PDN truck and gave me a box of swag to give away. And he was like, you need to approach the industry. And that's what I did. I approached the industry.
That's surprising because Rob's anti-gun.
Yeah. Oh, Rob hugely, because the internet told me so. He doesn't like guns.
Oh,
He
sorry. I
loves
didn't mean to,
anti-gun.
yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had to throw that in there
Oh,
because
hell yeah. Rob's
all the time.
anti-gun. And he gave me a buttload of stuff and told me to contact the industry. And I did. And they started helping and donating stuff. And I put stuff together. So we give away, have raffles and swag bags. And we have free booklets. Everybody loves a pamphlet. I don't care. If you got a really cool catalog, people want to go through it. And what I wanted was to have a catalog there. So when people shot guns at my event, they can like take it back to their cubicle at work and go, yo, Jim, check it out. I was shooting this weekend from this company. Really? Yeah, dude. Can I go to that event? Yeah. And that's how it grew. It went from 4 people to 6 people. And then it started growing because people heard about me on different podcasts. I've been putting in work, and we can say I've been on a podcast a week since 2015. Just
It's really good.
my own or someone else's.
Right. Tony, I have a question for you. So like as a fellow New Jersey, but as like a New Jerseyan that literally was like feet don't fail me now in 2018 when I sold my company there and just got out. How difficult did you find that? Because it's a tough place to be a gun owner and it's a tough place to have a gun company.
Dude, it's like, if you don't live here, you don't know the weight. It feels like a weight on you as a firearms owner, especially if you're out of the closet firearms owner, if you're openly to a friendly or a gun owner. People say dumb stuff. You know, the law is not really on your side. If you get caught, you're going to be painted as the worst of the worst. They're gonna go extreme. New Jersey breaks its own laws to get you. They break their own laws even to approve your firearms ID card and pistol purchase permit. They have 30 days to do a background check because this law was written in the 60s. And they take longer than 30 days to do it regularly, to the point that it was almost a, what do you call those, a lawsuit brought by multiple 2A organizations against the state law enforcement because they were routinely taking longer than 90 days to get people back their firearms ID cards. The mayor of Jersey City would brag that it took over a year to get your background check done. He thought it was great. It's 100% illegal. So that's what you deal with in Jersey. So it's difficult. And if you're at work and if you're like a school teacher and you're open talking about firearms, they'll probably find a way to get rid of you. It depending on where you live. South Jersey, West Jersey, a little bit different, but Central and Northern Jersey, big time anti-gun, blue state bullcrap. So it's a lot. I decided that I was going to be openly pro-gun and use my real name and not hide behind anything. And that was just the way I was going to live. And if it sucked, it sucked. But this is what I'm going to do because you can't hide behind something and be an advocate, an open advocate at the same time.
I'm going to ask, how was it? Because I'm just going to presume the same thing happened to you as happened to me, being an iconoclast, loud, outspoken, proud, polite, but firm. How was it losing people or watching them distance from you? Because I assume that happened.
There has to be a certain level of narcissism you have to do some of this. And sorry, but if some people distance themselves away from me, I didn't notice them go. Because I'm too busy doing this to go, oh, who hasn't spoken to me in the last 7 years?
You didn't get any whispers of trash talking or get told you shouldn't be doing that, or you're bringing heat down on everybody, you're going to make problems, like that stuff?
Yeah, but that was my mom. And,
Don't embarrass the family name.
Oh, you're Black and they're going to come after you because, and actually the very first diversity shoot I had, now I knew no one. This was in the early days of me being on Facebook. 4 people showed up. And then this other Black guy showed up, mid-30s, early 40s, clean cut. John told me about it. Well, who's John? I know 24 people on Facebook. Who's John? Ends up state police, head of the firearms division, in incognito, coming to check and see what the Black History Month diversity shoot was about. So I had cops in my very first friggin' class checking up on us. And I just assumed that was the way it's gonna be. So I make sure the things I say are true, not derogatory. I'm not screaming overthrow the government, vote from the rooftop, we need anarchy, none of that. I'm saying you need to fight for your civil rights using the system, regardless of your background, regardless of who you are. And I just leave it at that. I don't even endorse candidates. I'm just saying be aware of who your candidates are and their voting record and hold them accountable for it. I'm not trying to change people from being Democrat to Republican or being a Republican to Libertarian. Stay in your party because we need you, because we need people to stay in their party to make gun control in that party toxic. Yeah. If I converted everyone to a Democrat, it would be nuts. Or excuse me, from Democrat to a Republican, you still have a Democratic Party fighting against your rights, and you still have Republican that will vote against your rights. But if I say stay in your party and make gun control toxic, we can change the culture. We just have to do it together.
I'm noticing more and more of that because, again, I'm new to the community, but scrolling through feeds and posts, I'm noticing a lot of neutrality, a lot of it's 2A centered. It's a fundamental human right. I don't care about your politics. That's what I'm seeing. And unbelievably, it's actually really hard to tell where people are registered or if they're registered with a party. And I think that's probably a testament to the power behind the message, because there's no distractions, right? There's no trying to peer through and see the agenda. The agenda is freedom. It's like defend yourself, freedom. Like it'd be like asking, well, it's a little different these days, but I got a journalism degree. So First Amendment was always pounded into my head in undergrad. And and it didn't matter what you were registered with. We couldn't tell back then when everybody was like, no, free speech, free speech, free speech. And then all of a sudden things went sideways the last 10 or 15 years. But it's like, I don't understand how this stuff became political. And that's a recurring question I ask our guests who've been doing this, longer than I have, is like, how and where, and I'm interested in your take, how and where did firearms rights become politicized? It seems so stupid.
Okay. Jay Factor, who is one of the lawyers that are leading the fight here in Jersey. He's a historian. He can pretty much probably give you the date that it became political. I can't. I just know when America started seeing armed Black people pushing back against people lynching them, when they saw against police brutality, and you can go Black Panthers, you can, do Roy Williams. At least I think that was Mr. Williams' last name, but he fought back against it in South Carolina in the 50s and 60s, early 60s, and ended up he had to take off and hide in Cuba to get away from the government trying to put him in jail for kidnapping, which he didn't do. And it was like when America started seeing Blacks fight back, all of a sudden gun control was really important in the late 60s. All of a sudden, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were assassinated, and Kennedy was assassinated. That's why we had 1968 gun control. That's not why you did that. That's not why you did that. Blacks and minorities, including Native Americans, Second Battle of Wounded Knee and things like that, were pushing back. They were pushing back against the government and the institutionalized racism, which was really institutionalized racism at the time, not what they want to call things now. You're living in the good times now. It was rough 50 years ago. And that's when it became political, because you had to take it away. You had to divide people, because divided people are easier to conquer. And we've been falling for it ever since, because they made everything political.
Wow.
Saying prayer in school, singing the national anthem, standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance. The things that your parents and grandparents, me, did growing up is now somehow politicized. They've politicized what bathroom you use, divisiveness. They want to divide us. As long as you can keep us divided, distracted, you can push any agenda you want to, and we're busy fighting among ourselves. And then when we notice it's too late, it's already a law. So that's the entire game plan. So that's why I try to tell people, focus on the 2A. And a lot of us have been saying it since 2015. 2015, I started. 2015, Maj started Black Guns Matter. 2015, Phil Smith started National American NAGA. That's what it's called. Make jokes if you wanna, but yeah, that's what it's called. Diana Mueller started DC Project. We all started in 2015. That was like the tipping point for many of us. And we just said enough's enough, and we all have to start working together to make this thing happen.
Who's the they? Who's the capital T they? Is it just broadly people in power who want to stay in power under the representation of democracy and democratic republic, or is there some more nefarious, shadowy entity?
Oh, I don't look. There's always been a they. I mean, they tried to overthrow the government in the 1930s, and they tried to gain power. There's always a power behind the power. There's the elected representatives, but they're the people that already work in Washington, D.C. every day for the last 50 years. Whenever you elect someone to a new position, it's not like they bring everybody with them from their home state. They bring their assistants, and there's already a mechanism in place that they plug into. That they is always there. That they is the real power behind what happens in DC and how things run. That they is in your capital of your state. It's always there. It's the infrastructure that's built that thinks it's more important than the freedoms that we actually enjoy. So it's not a tinfoil hat thing. I mean, you can look, you can get names, you can watch how things are done, that people go from government work to outside lobbying work to government work to outside lobbying work. And even in the military, when you retire from a position, they make you, if you're going to go into the same business on the civilian side, depends on what it is, they make you take a few years break before you can make that move because they want to break up those relationships.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not
true.
happening in the government.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And what you're really referring to there is, what that's my jam is systems theory. The system will fight to maintain its own homeostasis, its own conditions of stability. And the system is it's an abstract concept, but it's very real. And if we're looking at a family system, for example, there's parts within the system, but unless you create, and it's not up to me as the therapist to create this, all I can help create is a first order change. First order change is like, family's in therapy because dad's angry and he's drinking. Okay, well, we can get dad to stop drinking, but then once that anger calms down, there's still chaos within that system, and the system will fight to maintain it. So maybe teenage son starts getting moody and grumpy and whatnot. And so the second order change is when the system itself changes, and we liken it to a thermostat. So thermostat set to 72 degrees. It's running, running, running. You open a window in the middle of wintertime, cold air comes in, it kicks on and keeps that 72 degrees. If you want to make a second order change in the system, you have to change the temperature that you want to keep it at. Then you've got a different system in place, and tap it all the way down to 66 or whatever. So what we're talking about is a system that stays in place, and that's the they, and it's plug and play with the parts. It doesn't matter who's in there. The system has a vested interest in itself, and you could point to all sorts of things that make that system stay in place. Economics certainly is one of them, and until you get a systemic change, nothing really is going to change. It's like painting the cars on a carousel. It's the same carousel. It's going to go in circles. It's just a different color now. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like my friends. See, you have friends that are smarter than you are. You can get explanations that make sense. Um, yeah, that's really what it is, and that's when I say we have to make gun control itself toxic. It's not about whoever the heck you elect, more Republicans, less Democrats, more libertarians. It's about making the entire concept of messing with the Second Amendment just something you don't want to do if you want to have a political career.
That's
Period.
good. Yeah, and that alludes to what you said earlier. Is you're teaching people to use the system properly,
Yeah,
right?
yes. And understand, I don't want to vote from the rooftops. You know, I don't want a revolution. I don't want a second civil war. I'm fat, old, and lazy. I just want to go to my range and do gangster shit with my friends. That's all I want to do. Just shoot each other's guns and have fun. And I don't like politics at all.
Yeah.
Was it the Marine Corps that got you your love for guns, or did you have a love for guns before you entered the Corps?
I was that kid that always liked guns. I knew every gun in every TV show. I knew, and I would. My dad wanted me to read a lot as a kid because my handwriting was awful, and he wanted me to learn to write better. So he gave me books and demanded that I read a book, and at the end of every chapter, write a book report that he would read to improve my handwriting. And I could only read what he gave me. And my dad was going through college at the time, and he gave me books like Gambling with the Devil, the history of playing the devil, playing with the devil, history of gambling in America. That was the first book he gave me to read. It was like 600-page textbook from his college, and
And you're
I had to.
seven.
Yeah, I was like 10. He gave me like 10, and I had to read it and do a report on each chapter. And he said, when you finish reading this book, you can't read anything other than schoolwork in this book until you're done this book. When you finish this book, you can read anything you want. And when I finished that book, I read anything I wanted, and everything I liked reading was like Louis L'Amour books. It was like Soldier of Fortune magazine. It was Mac Bowling, Phoenix Force. I mean, I just read all the gun-centric stuff, and I loved it. And I liked guns, and I grew up in the South, so we could shoot guns anytime we wanted to. It was no stigma. I got out of the Corps, I bought my first gun. I like surplus. I like surplus guns with stories behind it. So my very first gun was a Mosin Nagant that was built in 1899, and it went through Soviet Union, and then it went to Finland, and it was used in Finland. My second gun was a Springfield 1917 Enfield from Winchester that not only fought in World War One, but went back to England in World War II. Has a little red band around it with 30-06 scraped into it. It was used by the British Home Guard, and then it came back to America. So I love the story behind surplus guns. So that's how I started. And when I became a firearms instructor, I just bought a Ruger 1022 to teach the basics. I didn't even have an AR, and I wasn't going to get one. I could give two dams about an AR-15 at the time, because I had M16s. I knew how to run that, but I was teaching regular people. I wasn't teaching tactical Timmies. Well, between 2012 and 2015, people started buying ARs because the law sunset, the assault weapons ban sunset. And all of a sudden there was an explosion in AR-15s and people were demanding classes. So I actually bought one. That's the only reason I have an AR, is because people demanded it and I got into it and I didn't lose anything. I mean, I knew exactly how to run an AR-15 because I ran M16s for 5 years. So it was just second nature. And that's how I got modern weapons now. And that's why I try to introduce people to the many aspects of firearms. So everything from black powder to 22s to air guns. Take a step into it and it's multi-faceted. You can go almost any direction in the firearms community and have fun, compete in competitions, become competitive to the point that you can get scholarships to college. And that's one of the directions I also lead people in when I talk to like minorities. I'm like, bro, you talk about your kid going to a basketball scholarship. You know, your little clumsy ass kid can't play basketball well enough to get a scholarship. But if he learns to shoot clays, sporting clays, he can end up in a good school. A lot of schools are giving scholarships for that. 10-meter air rifle, they have scholarships for that. I'm like, the firearm can be a way into a total nother life that you never expected, but you have to give it a chance and stop believing the narrative. And when I'm talking to minorities, I'm like, there's a reason they're convincing you not to do this. There's a reason they're pushing you, saying that you shouldn't have a gun, and you're buying into it. You might want to ask yourself, why are you buying into someone taking a right away? Let me tell you about the benefits of being involved in this. Cowboy action shooting, air rifle, shotgun, 3-gun, 2-gun, speed, what is it? Steel challenge with 22s. Your daughter can be involved in this and be a sponsored shooter and have a totally different career that you never thought of, like a whole different income stream. And I talk to people and come at it from different directions, because that's how we're going to win this. One-on-one conversations, listening to people, finding out what their concerns are. And then once you find out what their concerns are, you can actually talk to them like normal human beings. They aren't a bot. They aren't, you know, I don't know, hug a tree 619 on Twitter. It's a real person that you're having a conversation with, and you can talk to them about why a regular person would want a 30-round clipazine, and you know why you should own an AR-15. It's a conversation that has to be held between people and not slogans. And you have to get to that conversation by listening and talking to people and actually having a conversation.
What's your favorite gun now?
The next one.
The
Next one.
You sound like Yehuda.
A guy who I will never have on my show because it's a thing now. I invited him on my show when I first started, and it's like 5 years later, and I still haven't got him on the show, and now he's Susan Lucci. So everybody will be invited on my show before Yehuda will.
Keep your Jews on. Hey, Tony, what was the first industry event or show you attended, whether it be SHOT Show or NRA show? Or
it was NRA. The first one was NRA.
What year was that?
Where were we? It was in Knoxville. Yeah. So it had to be like 2016, maybe 2015, 2016. Louisville. I'm sorry. It was
Louisville. Okay, I was about to say, yeah, I don't think we were, but
Nothing's registering on Mike's face, and he's been to every NRA show since they were
Yeah.
invented.
No,
And he's like, that doesn't make sense.
yeah, it was Louisville. Sorry, it was Louisville.
Yeah, so Louisville. So when you first, so like for me, I've seen a shift, especially when it comes to diversity, and I still think there's a lot more diversity to be had with the gun companies, right? What I found is when you look at some of the minorities that have come in, they've kind of have created their own space, whether that be their own training centers or just their own brand or their own 501c3s or whatever. When you came in, what was your feeling? Like, what did you, were you looking around like, holy shit, there's nothing?
All right. I'm that dude that doesn't look around. I don't look around for people to look like me, mainly because I was always in that space where there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. I joined the Marine Corps, which had the smallest percentage of minorities in it. I was a computer programmer in the Marine Corps, which was one of the jobs that had the smallest amount of minorities in it. So I never looked for that. But you do notice. You do notice sometime when you're walking through, eventually it'll go, wow, I feel like I'm touring the Grand Ole Opry here. And it's no big deal. It is what it is. But I noticed it grow, and more minorities start coming in as the years went by. And like the Atlanta NRA was almost like the Soul Train Music Awards compared to when I first started going. I mean, there were a lot of minorities walking through, and they were all business owners. They had shops, they had training companies. And it's a little annoying because I spoke to Kevin Dixie about this. And if you can text Kevin, tell him, yes, I am coming to Train and Learn. He just sent me a text and I'm on the phone. So yeah, he just texted me, you coming to Train and Learn this year? Yes, I am. But what I noticed is even the firearms companies, they will hire one Black person. And I'm like, it's not showing the diversity you think it's showing, bro. Because you have, 5, 6, 8 sponsored white people, and then you got like one Black guy. And it's like, is there a number on us? You know what I mean? Like, why isn't there more of anything? Because when I started hosting my events in Jersey, what happened is I had the same 4 friends come to the first 2 events. And it was 3 Black guys and a Hispanic guy. And then they brought another friend of theirs that happened to be Black. And by then, word had gotten out, because this was month number 5 that I was hosting this, and a lot of white people started coming. And then it was Latinos, and then it was Asians, and then it started to be more and more Blacks coming. So it's a thing. You have to invite people, and people have to feel comfortable with your product. And as an industry dude, if you only have one Black guy, we see that. It's not what you think it is. It's not going, oh, we're all going to show up over there. It's like, you need to get more people that look like not you.
Well, it's like it actually like brings attention to the exception.
Yeah. It's
Right.
like, why you only have one Black guy? You don't know any other Black people? You only hired that one Black dude or one Black lady? It's like, you should have more. Why isn't there 3 or 4? I mean, you have a 10-person team. Why is there one Black guy?
What, so speaking of Yehuda, who will never be on your show, he mentioned something in a different podcast. I host another podcast, it's just mental health, and I had him on quite a while ago, and I was asking him just about Jewish culture and whatnot, and how he became Pew Pew Jew and whatnot. He says, traditionally, culturally, Orthodox Jews especially, but the Jewish culture broadly, they just keep their heads down. It's kind of been programmed in over 6,000 years of discrimination. And I'm wondering if the same's not true for all the minorities that you listed off. Is it like we've just been beaten down enough that it's scary sticking our heads above the crowd to come to show up, let alone to take leadership roles, let alone to branch out. Are you seeing that? Is that your experience? Is that anybody else's experience?
Okay. Because I really hate this when people say, what is, it's like, look, we're not
Speak on behalf of the entire Black
Yeah,
community, please, Tony. It's a monolithic it's a monolithic culture, and you are our representative.
Yes, as the king of the Blacks. It's It's different because again, born and raised in Southern Virginia, Southwestern Virginia, um, firearms are just a part of our lives. But then when I moved into New Jersey, which is in the Northeast, it's a different culture in urban environment of firearms ownership. It's a totally different culture, and it's something you're not supposed to do, and you shouldn't have a gun. Don't you know better than having a gun? And it's like, wow, we had guns in the back of the truck. Like we pretty much assumed if someone had a vehicle, there was a firearm in it where I grew up, regardless of the race. And then you come up here, and if they have a gun in the car, more than likely they're a criminal. And
So
that was just
it's not, it's far less racial than it is geographic or political,
in my
maybe by the
experience.
political climate.
Maybe my experience. I mean, because I moved from the south to the north, so I'm just putting it on to
Yeah.
that. It was just like that's politically how it seems. Even if with white people, they if they have a gun in the car, many depends on the age, think you're a criminal or a bad guy, and also depends on like middle-aged white dude who has a firearm in the car. Well, what's the firearm? Oh, it's a shotgun. Oh, he's one of those hunter guys or something like that.
Right.
But as a black person, gun means bad up here. And I'm trying to help change that. Look, that's your right. You should be able to own this. Now ask yourself, why are people trying to stop you from owning this thing? And then what political party do they belong to? And there are a lot of rhinos up here. And it's like, regardless of the political party they belong to, they're trying to take your right. You need to push back against that. You need to actively push back against that. And that's what I try to convince people to do. And it really sucks. But it would suck more if I were trying to get them to vote outside of their party because no one's going to listen. For people are so dedicated to this party thing that it's nuts. They'll vote D down the line or R down the line because that's how their granddad voted and their dad voted. And everybody in their circle votes. And it's like, do you even know who these representatives are, how they vote for your rights or against your rights? Nope. It's like, then you really need to learn that because you need to make them pay. And the way to make them pay is find out what they do. And if you don't like what they do, find somebody in that same party that you do agree with, volunteer with them, donate money to them, and promote them if you want to make a difference, and then vote for them in the primaries because that's where the change happens. Change ain't going to happen when you're sitting on your ass, regardless of who you are. You're going to have to be active. If you are listening to this podcast and after it's over and you still do nothing politically, my thing is about the Second Amendment, but whatever it is you believe in, if you're not making any movement on it, then you're not really helping it. You're just benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a lot of people in the Second Amendment community don't accept that people can vote on something else besides the Second Amendment, but be pro 2A?
Yeah, there's just a lack of nuance that people just do
Yeah.
not understand. You have to be with me or against me. Well, that's juvenile as hell. I mean, that's really juvenile. There's other ways to handle this. No political party is going to save the Second Amendment because no political party is really pushing the Second Amendment. I like to say that the Democratic National Party's goal is gun control. The Republican National Party's goal is gun control at a slower rate.
Hmm.
That's all. There's no difference. It's just speed. And because the Republicans aren't pushing back, no one's actively fighting for your Second Amendment rights on the national level. The Republicans are just trying to maintain status quo. Well, that's not how you want to fight. I want all of my rights back. I want to be able to log on to Amazon and get a belt fed dropped off at my house with a suppressor. That's what I want. That's where we can start my conversation because people often assume when I'm talking about the Second Amendment and talking about bringing other people in that somehow I believe in compromise. No, I'm a hardcore Second Amendment absolutist. But I do believe that we have to get people on the same page to start fighting for the small things first. And eventually they can get to my end, the deep end of the pool where I'm at.
Yeah, it's always a hard conversation to have with somebody that is like gun ignorant, right? You know, I hate it when they always jump into that whole thing like, well, you don't believe people should have suppressors, right? You know, they're trying to find out where you stand, and unfortunately, it's a difficult conversation to have just because they're talking about something they don't know anything about. You know what I mean? And they have a fear that's based pretty much on movies, right?
Yep.
So
I'm like, you don't think anyone should have suppressors? I think I should have a suppressor for my tank's gun that's parked in my driveway.
well, yeah, I mean, I always say that, you know, people always like try to interpret the Second Amendment and the Constitution, and I'm like, yeah, maybe they didn't, you know, to me, it sees the future, right? Like the government, you can have what the government can have, right? To protect yourself from the government. And I think that's pretty telling. And to me, I'm like, I'm not so sure they didn't want us to have tanks. Like,
They had you could own a warship as a civilian with all the cannon that it includes if you could afford it. And they had no problem with that because they used that to actually fight the British. And I'm like, yeah, they understood you should have what the military had. And you can't dismiss them because they were people of their times. Yes, many of them owned slaves. Many of them didn't think women should have the same rights as men, but they still understood freedom for themselves. And they understood government and how government couldn't be trusted because it's a monolith, it's a system. And you have to be able to check government. And the best way to check government is to be armed against it, or else it will roll over you. And history's proven them right. And history has proven us right, as what happened in the Ukraine when push came to shove. All of a sudden, they're throwing machine guns off the back of trucks to civilians. By the way, not doing you any favors. I'm just saying that. Everybody, see. I'm like, no, that's called cannon fodder. That's what that is. That's propaganda and cannon fodder. That's why we need to push for the Second Amendment here, so that can be part of our culture at all times. So there's enough of your friends and your friends' friends that have AR-15s and have AK-47s and have run drills and have shot them and are comfortable with them, that if anything does happen, they're actually a viable threat because they have some training. That's why we need to fight this fight, because that can happen anywhere. As 2020, 2021 proved, you have no idea how bad America can get and how quickly it can go south. Sorry, but if we have 2 natural disasters and like 3 man-made disasters in like a 6-month time period, it could happen here, or at least in parts of here, as it happened in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, as it happened in parts of New Jersey that nobody will tell you about during Tropical Storm Sandy, when police did not come out, when you were on your own after dark in certain neighborhoods that had no power and people were coming in and looting your homes. You don't hear about those stories unless you lived here during that time frame. That was happening in Jersey. So it can go south quickly. That's why you need to fight for your Second Amendment rights. You need to keep an eye on your government when they do things like, oh, your Second Amendment rights are suspended during a national emergency or an emergency. No, that's when you need your stuff, because the cops ain't coming out, as they showed in 2020 and 2021. It gets bad. They go home to their families too, because they care about their loved ones, and F that oath they took to the Constitution. That's not going to help you when people kicking in your door, roaming down your street. So yeah, fight for your rights, fight for other people's rights. It's going to take all of us working together to stop this.
Okay, so this is a Guns Mental Health podcast. What's your interest in the mental health part of that?
And my mental health part of that, I leave it up to other people that are well more educated than I am on the subject. Only because I have family with a history of depression, and I've had friends that take their own lives. And for a while in the gun community, people were going, oh, if you have a problem and you're thinking about taking your own life, here's my phone number and call me. And I'm like, no, do not call me, because I've been on the receiving end of those phone calls, hoping and praying that I don't say the wrong thing. And I'm not the last person this human being is talking to because I couldn't help them. That scared the crap out of me. I am not trained on that. So I don't try to talk on that, because the price of messing up is somebody may take their own life. Yeah, so no, I don't mess around with that, dude. That's you, that's Mike, that's other people. I'll direct people in that direction. but I don't want that responsibility because one of the people that I've had this conversation with is my sister. And dude, you can have a theory all you want. But when you're worrying you're going to say the wrong thing to your little sister, no, I'm not playing with that. So in that entire conversation, I kept telling her, you need to call somebody professional. I love you. We can talk all you want. But if you're really thinking about taking your own life, you need to call somebody that can do this. I'll talk to you as long as you want. We talked for like 4 hours. But you know how worried I was that once she hung up on the phone, maybe I didn't say the right thing. This shit's real. So virtue signaling on your freaking internet, fucking social media shit. Nah, contact somebody, man. My friend Clem killed himself day after Christmas, 2019. He was heading in a bad place. Everybody saw it, and no one could convince him to get help. And when somebody brought it up, he was like, nothing can help me out of where I am now. And he took his own life. And that affected the entire prison because dude had over 25 years in. So you had generations of cops that knew him and worked with him. He was a problem solver. Any problem you had, he came to you. He wanted to work with me. He was the secondest for everyone. He was like, look, anything you need, I hope you would. Here's some of my stuff. You can raffle off and raise money. So yeah, I don't know what to say to people. So yeah, I leave that whole part alone because there are people like you guys that take care of that and do it professionally, not me hoping I get something right because I don't want to lose anybody else.
This is a great subject because it flies in the face of what people in my, I'm really glad you said that. I'm really glad you said that because part of being outspoken in my community is breaking from the tradition, and some of the people in our community don't want to hear what you just said. My profession is like, no, we could tell everybody how to do our jobs and stop everything. It's like, you got to know people's limitations and what they do and don't want to do. We can't be thumping on this drum of like turning everybody into junior clinicians. I say that. I say, when I give a presentation, I'm like, it would be nice if I turned you all into little junior clinicians. You can go out and help each other and whatnot. And that's how society moved forward for 40,000 years to present day. We need to not take ourselves so seriously. And it's like, I might as well have just, lit my hair on fire and run screaming naked down the street. It's like, what's that guy doing? And I'm trying to figure out how to communicate the message that guns and mental health can exist in the same realm. I'm a firearms owning clinician. I had to come out of the closet for that. Cost me some social capital. Don't care. It's worth the trade because what I gained in return is conversations like this one and more people paying attention. But I'm trying to figure out how we get away from the separation of the two. Mike and I talk a lot about this like chasm that's been imposed between firearms owners and mental health practitioner, or any health practitioner for that matter. How do we close that gap? How do we encourage people to like move forward in it, advocating for their rights and advocating for their wellness while risking neither?
Okay, as a dude that grew up man's man bullcrap, in the military, dude, they stigmatized you if you needed help. If you needed any kind of mental health help, you knew it was going to affect you getting promoted. You knew it was going to affect how your coworkers looked at you. And of course, we lived in the barracks, so it's not like you got away from them. You know what I mean? You didn't go home to your house. You went back to the barracks where it was three of you guys in the same room. So we had to get rid of that stigma that it's okay to talk to someone. We also have to remove that shit from paperwork when you go to buy a firearm that you've gone to see someone professionally. And then my ex-girlfriend, who was always telling me, you need to go speak to someone. You need to go speak to someone. I'm like, yeah, if I speak to someone, I can give up my firearms. And it may also affect my regular job. So, and then of course, with the passing of red flag stuff, it's even worse.
Yep.
So we've allowed this, and a lot of people who supposedly are pro gun are pro red flag because they don't see the bad that can come from it, or just how on a whole it's a bad idea initially. So we have to get rid of some of that stuff. We have to get rid of the stigma. You got to get rid of the risk as a gun owner of what you can lose if someone decides to go. He was seeing somebody. He was seeing a mental health professional because he wasn't all there. No, that's not why you're doing that. You're going through something and you might need someone to lead you out of it.
Yeah.
And stop you from making bad decisions. And that's what we got to work on. We got to work on that whole thing being seen as a negative, and also the negative that can come from it that can actually lose you your job, your firearms, and your freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. It's again, back to the system. It's a systemic change. It's a cultural change. It's, pulling mental health out of the shadows and putting it in the realm of physical health, saying, look, you wouldn't lose any rights for twisting your knee and going to get ACL surgery and learning to walk again without a limp. Why are we doing it here? And it's steeped in decades and decades of misunderstanding and, Hollywood misinformation about what it means. And I think it really boils down to, what is the mind? We can't touch it. We can't see it on an x-ray. So we don't know that it's actually healthy. And I think that scares people when they have to deal with something of the unknown. And that's why I love emotional functioning. If you know how to tolerate fear, you can push through the fear and go, all right, I can alleviate my fear by more knowledge. So how do we get more knowledge out? Teaching, training, YouTube videos, more podcasts. Everybody should have podcasts. More podcasts. And normalize the conversation between and among friends to say, I'm not going to judge you. Go to your employer, ask them, say, hey, what's up with this policy here about unfit for duty? Why do I have to get a screening or a discharge letter to come back and say that I'm a-okay? Liability. What if you go crazy at work and punch a hole in the wall? And it's like, who are you going to blame then? It's like, you're going to blame the practitioner, because then the practitioners don't want to sign the note. And it's like, the whole thing just falls in on itself. It's terrible. And I blame our profession. I think we've contributed to that stigma from some of the stuff that I said earlier. We're risk averse too. We run around getting taught that everybody's out to sue us at some point or another for saying the wrong thing or typing the wrong note or whatever. And it's all because we've failed to have a spine and stand up against it and go, no, damn it, I did my job and I'm not responsible for this person's behaviors. And that's it. You're responsible for your behaviors. You're responsible for knowing yourself well enough that if you are in a bad spot, you'd better be able to distance yourself from the things that could cause harm, like firearms. And states like New Jersey don't make that possible.
Nope.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole, like, I get sued thing drives me nuts, especially when it comes to like the firearm companies or the stores. Like, what if I take that person's gun in and I give it back to them and then they do something horrific with it and I get sued? I'm like, well, what if you get sued because you didn't take their gun in and they came to you and said, I need to put this somewhere? And you can still you can move that goalpost all day long. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Just, it's tough for me, Tony. Obviously, it's like my baby, but that's why I wanted to make this as easy as possible for the gun community to get involved in this. It's like, all I have to do is put this flyer in the box and I'm good. Like, that's a step in the right direction. Or put this flyer out on the counter, or I'll support Jake and Mike throwing these courses that help these mental health clinicians understand a gun 101, and be culturally competent. It just seems so simple of how you can get involved and make a difference. A difference that will get us to where the alcohol industry got with DUIs, as opposed to being the tobacco industry, which everybody hates. So,
yeah. And it's frustrating listening to people when you talk about what you do. And they're like, that's a great idea. I'd love to help. How? Here's how. And then nothing. than nothing.
Yep.
It's like, come on, people. And this is to everybody. I'm not asking you, again, this is regardless, whatever your political belief is, you should fight for it. You should move towards achieving your goal through work. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you feel like you're contributing. We can all look at the news and feel hopeless and go, we can't control things on the world stage. Yeah, but you can control what you do and you can stand up for the thing you believe in. And I'm not talking about putting a flag as your profile picture on your social media. I mean, actually do something. And my friend Sean I said this all the time, and then he used it against me, and that's what made me start the Second is for Everyone. Are you going to be about it or just talk about it? You're going to talk about it or be about it? Which one is it? Because if all you're going to do is talk about it, then you just part of the cacophony of bullshit on social media. If you're going to do something about it, if it's as little as sharing a social media post of your favorite whatever that's in this fight, your favorite advocate, cool. Volunteer with that advocacy group. Donate to that advocacy group. Slowly slide into it to whatever level, slide into the water to whatever level you're comfortable with, and then take one more step and leave it at that. I talked to Reverend Ken Blanchard. We were actually having a discussion before I was on his podcast. And maybe it was after when we were just talking. He was like, don't let this thing break you. Don't let this take money and food out of your child's mouth when you're doing this Second Amendment advocacy, because no one will appreciate it. So yeah, go in as deep as you can without negatively affecting the things that you do, but get involved. It'll feel a lot better when you're doing it, because you'll have people that also believe in the thing you believe. You'll have a new group of friends, and you'll have a feeling of empowerment as a citizen that you're making shit happen, like a country was actually built to make it happen. There are a lot of people on social media saying your vote doesn't count and no one should vote and anarchy and all kinds of other corny stuff. Well, I can choose to believe random dude on internet, or I can choose to believe, I don't know, the founders of this country, and all those Black people that came before me that fought for their right to have these civil rights. And they thought it was important to vote and volunteer and run for office. I think I'll listen to them and not the loser, maybe bot, that's telling me not to exercise my rights. Get
Yeah,
out there and be part of this.
I'd like to restore some confidence to people and get rid of the risk aversion that we all seem to face. And I think there's multiple reasons we've landed where we are, fat, dumb, and happy with our Netflix and Amazon deliveries and instant gratification. And it's just, the difference between action and activism is basically a description of taking what you really value, sacrificing, and trading it for something that doesn't have a guaranteed outcome. And activism doesn't do that. Activism says, I'm going to take what's left of my free time, go grab a picket sign and wave it at the courthouse. Action says, I'm going to set aside Tuesday and Thursday nights to go down to the club meeting and promote said belief or product. And I hope it works. I believe in it. So it doesn't matter if it does, because at least I'll have acted. And it takes a real sacrifice. Leaving your job to go run for political office is a sacrifice. It's an incredible sacrifice. Leaving your job to go to another job because you don't believe in that company's values anymore is a sacrifice. That's action. Screeching about it on social media to your boss, is activism. Not to your boss, to your friends about your boss. The same thing with schools and how your kids are taught and all the stuff that people screech about. It's like, that's not action. That doesn't take any sacrifice. You're using your leftover scraps of free time to do that. And while you're doing it, the brain intrinsically knows you're not making a dent. You're not making actual change. And so there's this compounded frustration by misaligned expectations, where you're talking one thing, saying I'm doing something by putting a flag in my profile pic, but the brain knows you're not doing anything. And having that really tough to reconcile creates anxiety, it creates frustration, it creates anger, and then that ends up spiraling, and it affects people. The opposite is also true. When somebody models like you have modeled, like we have modeled, we go out and we make sacrifices, we take time away from our families and our businesses. Mike freaking sold his business to focus on this. That then sends a signal to other people, go, oh, well, they didn't die. Like, in fact, they look pretty healthy. They're proud of what they're doing. Though it be slow. If you set your sights on 20 years instead of 2, you're probably going to align your expectations pretty quickly with reality. And then you're going to get some satisfaction of it. And hopefully along the way, people see that and they also get motivated. I'm very proud of what you have described as what you're doing, because that your passion and energy are palpable even through the screen, and I've been around you in person. So it's, I know what it's like, but you're a believer, but you're not a blind believer in somebody else's idea. You have examined these beliefs yourself, and you stand on them proudly and can articulate exactly why you do what you do. And I think that's super important. And if more people started doing that, questioning why they do what they do, it's okay to return to it, stay where you are if you like what you're doing, but at least know that you're in charge of your decisions. You're not doing it out of reflexive response to the environment or somebody else's emotional triggers or just what your parents told you. You can then move forward, and in so doing, you can stand up under scrutiny and examination and explain to other people why, and that catches fire. That ripple effect knows no end. It's really great. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see a return to that courage, that that realization that you don't have to go first. Somebody else has probably already gone first. All you got to do is maybe avoid some of the potholes they stepped in, and most of us are proud to teach that to anybody.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I do it all the time. Again, I have no competition. I am not pushing or fighting against anyone else in this. You want to get in the fight, come to me, tell you how to get in the fight. It's funny because, again, there's different ways to do this. We talked about it earlier because, again, we started at the same time, myself and Maj. My story is a little more successful than I am on the national stage and the money raising and things, but we have different personalities. And someone was talking about it, and they asked Maj, Tony Simon, he's such a nice guy. Tony is this, and and Maj went, yeah, Tony is a nice guy, and I'm not. It was like, yeah, because Maj got that Black Panther, Malcolm X energy, and I'm like Uncle Phil. It's just like you're
Uncle Phil of the gun industry.
I mean, I got the look, bro.
You do. Yeah. If you don't watch that video, look up Tony. He looks like Uncle Phil. It's great. If you could, I'll bet you speak from your belly sometimes too. And it's a considerable belly.
Hey.
Will.
But we don't have to be the same. We really don't. We don't have to have the same priorities when it comes to firearms. There can be a FUD fighting for your rights right beside a tactical Timmy, right beside the guy that keeps his gun in the sock drawer and has never pulled it out. We can all fight for the same thing. And I think we should put our differences aside because they're not important in the 2A fight. Where they are important is you connect with people in your circle who have your same beliefs as you and get them involved in moving over here, not to compromise themselves, but to work with other people that aren't just like them. That's the circles we have to move together, not towards compromise, but towards understanding and empathy. You have to understand that these people don't have the same perspective as you. Wherever the hell you grew up, there was somebody that grew up in a 180-degree different environment than yours. You still have to be able to come in contact with that person and convince that person or work with that person to fight for the same rights. That's what we have to do. And that's what they, whoever the heck you want to believe they is working on dividing you. Take a chance, stop looking at your news, whichever news medium you use, CNN, Fox. I don't know. I stopped watching the news in 2016. So look at the other sides and see them how they paint you. They paint you the same way the other side paints each other. You're crazy, you're an extremist, and you hate the other side. It's not true at all. It's not true at all, but they're trying to paint it that way. You need to ask yourself, why is that important? Stops you from talking, stops you from getting together, and it stops you from pushing back against extreme, ridiculous political things. If you can have a conversation and both you go, hey, I think red flag laws are a bad idea. This is why. And the other person goes, I think red flag laws are a bad idea too. And this is why. Now you had a conversation that you can both write, one, your Democratic lawmaker, and the other can write the Republican lawmaker and go, this is why red flag laws are bad ideas. We have to get busy with this. We can't let them keep playing us. And the longer you live, the more you see the same thing repeating itself. That's why the old man in the back of the barbershop used to yell the loudest and complain all the time, and you never understood it when you were a kid, because they've seen some things. They've seen it before. Whatever you're seeing for the first time, this might be, depending on their age, the third or fourth time they've seen it. Stop buying into it. Get into the fight. Be an individual. Learn that all communication is manipulation. Write that shit down. I'm doing it to you right now. Why? Because I want to build a better America. I want the Second Amendment and the freedoms that our forefathers had to still be alive well after I'm gone. I want that fight to be there. Second Amendment needs to be there because what happened in the Ukraine is just the latest thing that they televise. It's happening all around the world. It's happening to brown people all around the world. We can leave I don't know why it's white people and they care about it and they put it on the news this time, because it's been happening. It happened in Georgia there. It happened in Kosovo. I mean, it's happened to white people too. It happened with the Chechens and the Russians. This is just the latest thing they're televising when the government is crushing citizens. That's a status quo on the planet Earth. What we live in is the exception to the rule. And when you have a bunch of fools trying to convince you this is the way the world is, that is not true at all. The world is a very violent and dangerous place outside of our borders. It can visit here quite easily. And again, we can name it. When Portland went up, when other things went up, when civil disobedience happened, it doesn't make a difference if you're in Mogadishu, Kiev, or Portland. If people are burning the houses down on your freaking street, you're going to have to defend yourself or have a means to get your family away. Second Amendment is that means. Fight for it. Get involved. Convince other people to get involved by putting them in that headspace through conversation, not preaching at them, finding out what they believe in, what they fear, and then talking about that in a reasonable manner. That's all. You don't have to get them to buy an AR-15 tomorrow. But if you can get them to talk to you when something comes on the news, hey, I just saw this thing, this special on CNN. Is this true? Come on over. Let's have a talk. Throw some shrimp on the barbie or whatever the hell people eat. Cook some food. You people eat. And that's mean to anybody, any culture, anybody, whatever your people eat. Macaroni and cheese. I don't know. Just cook something up, because when you break bread, you break down barriers. Have a beer, talk to another person, and have a conversation. That's the only way we're going to win. We ain't going to win through arguments on the internet, because that's just ridiculous. I only use arguments on the internet to actually reach other people. I'm not even talking to the hardcore nut job that you think the conversation is being held with. I'm putting information out there for others, third parties, to read and go, ooh, that's a good point. That's why I'm doing that. And usually I only do 2 replies. I'm done with it after that.
You get that from KD?
Yep. Straight from KD.
Yep.
Because after, you make like 6 replies, you're like, why am I wasting my time giving a free class? I'm an hour into this or 2 hours into this. No.
100%.
Well, that feels like a good place to stop.
Yeah, definitely. I got one last question for you, Tony.
Sure.
How do you tend to your mental health?
Range trips, bro. It really is. Okay. I started out in high school shooting a 10-meter air rifle. So it's the breathing, and the focus and the concentration. People call it yoga, meditation, or whatever. But especially when I'm at an outdoor range, I have a couple of very accurate 22s. I have CZ Ultralux 22, like a 24-inch barrel target sights. Put a target out at 15 yards, get a box of ammo, and just slowly shoot the tightest freaking groups I can. And that brings it in, brings it down, lets me focus, lets me get on the even kill. Um, I think it's like the breathing exercise, the quiet with the double earmuffs, and it's just how I zone in, kind of a Zen thing. That's usually what I do. If I need to talk to someone, I talk to my wife for the most part. But as guys, we don't talk enough about our problems, so mostly my stuff's internalized. So again, it's the range thing. I even have an air rifle that I do it with. Just shoot tight groups and breathe.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I think, Jake, I don't think we've had anybody ever talk about like the lead therapy thing.
No, it's usually in the practice of like going off and being in a Zen space for sure, ripping off a bunch of rounds and being out, whether you're outdoors or indoors. Usually it's outdoors when people are identifying that. It's like with buddies or whatever. But what you just described there about especially the breathing, zeroing in and calmly putting round on round to get the tightest group you can. I'm taking that away. That hit me
Yeah.
because I've got such an urge all the time to just go out, and I could drive 10, 15 minutes and be in the middle of the Nevada desert and plink. And I'm always like, oh, I got to drag all this stuff out and I got to walk across the sagebrush and set it up. And I got to put my backstop, all this stuff. And it's like, and then I go, what am I doing out here? Just wasting ammo. And it's like, no, I need to get out of my own anxiety filled head and like slow down and make this an individualized experience for me and challenge myself to focus. Cause so much of my day is spent scattered in all directions. Always, it's like, I don't even know where I'm going next. I got to wait till my phone beeps and tells me, right? But that is great to hear. And here's it's the third time. It's one of those things where you go, if something pops up 3 times in a very short period of time, you should pay attention to it. This is the third time now that somebody's either broached the subject or directly asked, what is the mental health benefit to guns? That's it. That's one of them. That is it right there. And one of the two was this article that Samantha Mann just published on NRA Women about a little kid with autism went down to range in Arizona, and it did wonders for him because it helped him focus. And it's like, why am I not applying that to my own life? Well, now I need to. It just all crystallized right there. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
We had a kid, and again, I don't do mental health. Kid had ADD, ADHD, all kinds of letters. They called him Taz. That was his nickname. He just going. Came to our rifle class. The only time he calmed down and focused was when he got behind the trigger. And the kid shot exceptionally well, followed all the rules, was not spazzy at all. And then he comes off and he's got to do stuff, got to move stuff, got to touch stuff. But once behind the trigger, it's the breathing, it's the focus, it's the one round at a time that brings me down, that brings me in, that makes me feel clean. Because my job is a little bit high stress.
We didn't talk about that. What is your day job?
I'm in charge of locks and locking mechanisms in the maximum security prison. So yeah, if I do my job badly or don't do my job really, really, really bad things can happen. And you can meet unique and interesting people because they got out of where they were locked up. So yeah, that job, it can be, I love it. I've been doing it for 30 years in the civilian world and working with the state. But I enjoy it. I enjoy helping people, even in the prison environment, because when an inmate's cell goes down, this is where this guy lives. This is where this guy lives with all his paperwork on all his cases. This is his home. Some of them don't think about it like that, but this is where all your stuff is and how your daily routine is set up. And if your door goes down and they can't secure it, they're going to move you. And you might not like the unit they move you to or who they move you in with. So it's stressful to them in a very stressful environment where you can't have much of you. So I'm still helping people, even if it's helping inmates, which they're people.
I'll tell you what, I thought we were going to go the whole podcast without mentioning his name, but Christian Conti, who has been on here before, works with the Pennsylvania prison system and their DOC, teaching his yield theory to all the employees, inmates, COs, as well as the employees, staff, COs, and inmates. And it's all in the spirit of making Earth better and helping people see through their outward behaviors and acknowledging the human being on the inside. And they've realized a statistically significant reduction in assaultive behaviors across every setting in their prison system. Is so good that he's doing it statewide. So we may need to connect you with him.
Hey, why not? It's only a river away. I'm in.
That's right. Well, he's on the other side. He's in Pittsburgh, but he does travel all over. So I think there should be a connection for sure.
Cool.
Thanks, Tony.
Hey man, thanks guys. I know you guys gonna be busy and you won't be able to train and learn this year, but we'll see each other because I'm definitely doing SHOT Show. And who knows what else we're running to each other in the industry.
That's right.
Yeah. Where can people find you, Tony?
You can find me on diversityshoot.com, where you can donate, buy my swag, buy a t-shirt, buy my Lovetron t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a great one.
With me in the bubble bath. That actually raises funds for Pink Pistols and Operation Blazing Sword, which is the largest LGBTQ Second Amendment group in the country. You can also go to Black Swan Tactical and buy a patch with me in a bathtub. Yeah, I know. And that's to help out John Crump and the work he does, and we split the fees over that. You can also find me at Simon Says Train on IG, Simon Says Train on Facebook. The second is for everyone on Facebook, and the 2A4E podcast on your favorite podcast app. I do a weekly show that comes out once every month or so. I am the McRib of podcast. So I come around when I'm around.
A weekly show that comes out monthly.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. And as always, on behalf of Arms Corps, which is our title sponsor for this show, they've been supporting us for a really long time. They now have our free and anonymous mental health screening link on their ammo boxes, which is dope. On behalf of Zephyr Wellness, which is the company I own here in Northern Nevada, and on behalf of our Walk the Talk family across the country, thank you all for tuning in. Please download this and share it around if you haven't already. Give us a rating and review. That helps drive listenership, or so they tell me. And we will see you next time. Take care and practice good mental wellness. Bye-bye.